What's up guys, I'm Sean. My MCS dampeners finally arrived for my BMW F8X M2. These are the 1WNR, which stands for one-way non-remote. This is episode 2 on my suspension overhaul. I'll link part 1 at the end of this video. In part 1, I changed the front thrust arm bushing to a monoball bearing. I changed the rear camber arm bushing to a bearing as well, and I did a couple other things. Now that these dampeners arrive, now I can add on the springs, build this up to install to my M4. I bought this kit from BMW. I've been working with them for nearly a decade now. They helped me build my E46 M3 track car. Now I'm working with them on my F8X M2. I've worked with many shops over the years, but BMW by far is the best one. They answer all my questions, super responsive, and pretty much give me free consultation. Some of the other shops ghost you or don't answer your questions. This is my personal experience. It's not a paid sponsorship or anything. The sky's the limit for our dampeners. You can go with the 2-way, 3-way, 4-way, remote reservoir. This one matches my build and also my budget. I'm gonna start piecing it together. I received the springs and the thrust sheets and some other parts a few weeks ago. The front struts are side specific, so make sure you have the right one. This is the front right side, sway bar mount here. And that little nub that aligns the strut into the housing, the base spanner, the spring perch, the Delrin thrust sheet, the metal thrust sheet, the small helper spring, or the spring mount between the helper and the mainspring. Small side faces down. The mainspring. I have Vorschlag camber plates already on my M4. It's a Vorschlag camber plates for stock suspension. Now I just had to buy the conversion kit for the MCS. Take off this little plastic. For the F8X M2, it's a double nut. This nut is a 22mm nut, and you have to do it hand tight. Do not use an impact wrench on this. And I'm going to hold the piston with my hands right here. So I'm going to go hand tight as tight as I can. I decided to install the jam nut and the adjustment knob, just in case if there's no room when I install it into the car. I already have the Vorschlag camber plates installed with stock EDC suspension. I did a DIY video. If you haven't seen that video yet, check it out. So today this installation should be a little bit easier. I probably don't have to remove the strut brace and the carbon brace. I just have to get to these 4 Allen bolts right here. Now I just have to remove the OEM suspension. Sway bar 16. Remove the liner, bunch of 8mm screws, so we can unplug the EDC harness right here. Unplugged. Gonna wrap it with some tape later. I'm gonna open this up. Now we can move this whole thing up. Alright, I marked where my alignment is, but again, I'm going to need alignment later. But at least I can get it close once I put it back together. Alright, let's try to lower it slowly. This is on the front passenger side. If you're going to do the driver's side, make sure to undo the headlight leveling. Tough doing it alone, so I'm going to try to use a chisel instead, just to jam it in there. Alright, I can twist it out. Yeah. Everything came out. Alright, now I'm getting ready to install the coilover. Make sure that that little nub slides into the knuckle in the correct area. This section right here. is for the sway bar, and then the top, I'm going to spin this top around just like the way the previous setup was. So now I'm going to slide in the coilover, make sure everything lines up. Got the little nub lines up with the pinch clamp. Now I'm going to move my chisel, jack it up. You can reinstall the Allen heads. The coilover has been installed, so I'm going to err on the side of being higher. So between here and here, it's 2 inches. And the final adjustment is going to be later after I'm out on the wheels. The kit came with these type of spanner wrenches, one on the top, one on the bottom, opposite direction just to tighten it. Then I have to put on the adjustable sway bar in link and then tighten everything back up to spec. So here's the BMW sway bar in link. I matched it to the factory one. But once I install the suspension and everything's done, I'm going to mount the wheels, lower the car to the ground. Then I'm going to adjust the sway bar in link to make sure there's no preload on the sway bar before I can tighten down the nut. Right, the bottom sway bar in link has been installed. Direction says only torque it down to 18 foot-pounds. I'm not going to install the top in link yet because I still have to work on the other side. As far as the EDC, I put electrical tape on it. Now I just have to reinstall the fender liner and then head to the other side before I wrap this side up. Driver's side coilover is installed and done for now. Here's the top side. Taped up the EDC wire and just tucked it away. Now I'm going to tackle the rear. I didn't go with a true coilover setup because my factory shock tower is not reinforced with a roll cage. So I'm going with the traditional divorce setup, just like OEM. So these are the MCS shocks, and they are not side specific, but once you mount up the top, then they will be side specific. So these top plates, the arrow points forward, and these little spacers go here and here. Mounting between this slides to this piece, and this nut gets tightened down to 41 foot-pounds. And now the bottom, these spacers basically go like this. Slide it in. The right rear passenger shock is ready to be installed, and this is the spring mount that's going to go on the top of the car. Spring is going to be like that, and this is going to be the bottom spring pad. I'm going to undo the tin right there to open up the EDC. So we're going to plug this harness that goes to the bottom of the rear shock. Harness is unplugged. The bottom shock bolt is an 18 millimeter. I'm going to remove the rear camber bolt right here. It's a 21 millimeter. The option is to remove this one or remove the inner control arm bolt, but I upgraded that to a bearing and I already torqued it down, so I don't want to mess with that. So I'd rather just undo this. I'm going to tap out the bolts. Now we should be able to pry down this control arm. That. So take out the spring and the spring pad. Take out this top cup. Get a hammer and a chisel just to tap in between. So we don't need this. Let's just remove the rear shock. Torx E12. There's another EDC plug right there. Just have to pull that off. The rear factory shock comes out. I just popped off the factory metal spacer. Since there's no more EDC, I just removed this, and I'm going to tape up the EDC wire right here, tuck it back behind this. And then I put electrical tape on the EDC connector right here. So now we'll just cover this and put this panel back on. I reused the paper gasket, and I'm going to install it into the car. Run it down. torque these bolts to 21 foot-pounds. This goes onto the top. There's a tiny rubber O-ring that kind of holds it in place. Rubber spring pad. Just like that. Now I'm going to install the spring. Try to line everything up. Use a jack like this. Everything bolts up, lines up. I should do the same for the other side. The rear left side is installed. The only difference on the left side is the leveling arm, that 10mm nut that connects to the arms. Make sure you remove that. Now it's time to install the rear SPL toe arms. I bought the kit with the eccentric lockouts, and the SPL kit comes with instructions. So I'm going to measure from the bolt to a mark I put right here to try to get the toe close to what it was, but of course I have to get alignment. Torx E14. Now we're going to remove 18mm nuts. These thicker spacers go towards the middle of the car, the subframe. The thinner one goes toward the wheel hub. Run the factory bolt through it just to get it close. So if I look at this measurement, it's about even on both sides, and the holes are very close. Installation is pretty much reverse fashion. The thicker spacer goes towards the subframe. Factory bolt. The bearing's a little stiff, so you might have to stick the bolt head in here just to move the bearing to line it all up. I used the rubber mallet to gently tap this in. Now I can slide in the bolt with the eccentric lockout washer. Install the top eccentric lockout. The eccentric lockout is lined up with the cutout on the hub. Alright, everything's been torqued down to spec. 74 foot-pounds here and 74 foot-pounds over there. To make adjustments to the toe, you basically spin this rod to get the toe where you want it. Then you tighten these Allen bolts to 150 inch-pounds, which is basically 12.5 foot-pounds. Very lightly hand tight. Now I just have to do the same for the other side. Left rear toe arm has been installed. Everything's been torqued out in the spec. Alright guys, that's a wrap for now. MCS coilovers installed with the Bimble World adjustable sway bar inlinks. I have to tighten down the inlinks once I get my final ride height. And I want to make sure to tighten down the inlinks without any preload. MCS shock in the rear with the ground control spring perch. Once I finalize my ride height, then I can tighten down that spanner collar. SPL rear toe arm. Now I have to slap on the wheels, lower the car, and I also have to code out EDC. There's two options to go with the KW EDC cancellation kit. It's a plug and play kit, it costs about $400 or $500. I'm gonna code it out remotely instead. There's a few companies online that does it. It's only about $100 to code it out. Final adjustments is my suspension, get the ride height exactly where I want it. Tighten down the spring collars, tighten down the front sway bar inlinks, get an alignment, then I'll be ready for the track. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.